welcome to today's episode on Little Talk. My name is Kazeem Omolola, and today's topic is something that we've always heard about, something that happens around us. In fact, it's something that we just something that we've really enjoyed recently. It's a topic that happened recently to a celebrity, and it's something something that we are kind of interested in. And guess what that topic is? Guess. Okay, so the topic for today is child abuse. When I say, would I say early last was it early last month or mid last month when this trend was raining? Feel at home na set up. They say feel at home na set up. It happened because we had this celebrity gist about that Baba Ijesha stuff like that. Yeah, even though the story happened not to be what it seemed to be. So child abuse. What is child abuse? When we hear child abuse, most of us tend to think of sexual abuse. Now, yes, it is part of sexual abuse, but child abuse, there are various forms of child abuse. Child abuse is a very broad topic. It's a very broad thing that doesn't necessarily mean to only sexual abuse. Okay, now, so what is child abuse? Child abuse is when a parent or a caregiver, whether through action or failing to act. So, whether through action or failing to act. So, whether you do or you don't do, natural. So, it's whether through action or failing to act causes injury, death, or emotional harm, or risks of serious harm to a child. So it's either when you act or you fail to act, when these things begin to cause harm to the child emotionally, physically, or even injury to the child. That's what a child abuse is. So there are many forms of child abuse. There are many forms of child maltreatment, which include the neglect. We have physical abuse. We have emotional abuse. We have sexual abuse, exploitation, and emotional abuse. Down to the neglect, this occurs when a person, an adult or a caregiver, fails to meet the basic needs of the child. That is housing, clothing, food. We have education and medical care. So now I want you to also know that identifying a neglected child can be difficult, because we have families who can't really provide for these basic things, which doesn't truly mean they're neglecting their child. Now, for you to know, we have signs, we have basic signs of, there are these traits neglected children really show. So for you to know if this child is really a neglected child, there's this there are things to look out for from the child, which is first, when the parents don't take the child to the hospital when necessary. Like the child is seriously ill, point of death, and instead of taking the child to the hospital, they are saying probably they don't have money, or they just neglected the child. Oh, that's how she does. She'll get better. Now this really affects the child, and it's also a sign of child abuse. Now we also have leaving a child to stay at home all alone for a very long period of time. Now I don't know. I've experienced, I've seen someone like that, and it happened. Okay, I went somewhere and I saw the child. The child was in the compound, so I asked, "Sorry, I'm looking for so person," and the child was ready to go with me. I'm like, "Don't you have anybody at home? Don't worry, I'll find my way." They're like, "No, I want to go with you. I'm even bored." I was like, "Really? Who is at home with you? Your mom, your dad?" He said, "Nobody." I'm like, "Where's your mom?" She went to the shop. "Your dad, he has gone to work. So who is with you?" I said, "Nobody. I'm the only one." Really, this child I'm talking about is like a 6-7-year-old child, 5-6-7-year-old child. How would you even, I don't know, but how would people in their right senses leave a child of that age alone in the house? like alone. You know, when you do this, you, aside from the fact that it's a neglect to the child, it's you exposing the child to other forms of harm. You know, that's when kidnapping comes in, you know, different things, rape comes in, you know, this sexual abuse comes in. The child is open to different, all forms of harm, and it's really, really not advisable to do that, especially when it's something you do every time. Now, also, not having money for basic needs like meals, it's also a child neglect. At least, you know, let's try and provide something for the child. And that's when they say omoma pada di odukoko. Yeah, I don't know, pardon my Yoruba please. So let's try to, you know, even if it's twice daily, let's just try to provide meals for these children. So to the next one, which is the physical abuse. Okay, physical abuse is when the intentional use of physical objects to harm a child, or physical forces to harm a child. Now, you know, physical abuse could be pinching, could be slapping. All those are Yoruba mothers, our African mothers. Their fast action, those are fast hand. So now, doing it once or twice doesn't necessarily mean an abuse. It becomes an abuse when you constantly do it, or when it becomes something that it's known, that you are just known for. This child is just known for it. Like, receives different type of slapping every time. Now that's even when it's not necessary, even when it's something that you could probably just talk to the person. Instead, you prefer, you know, this physical forces on the child. Use physical forces on the child. We also have excessive, okay, as I said, excessive pinching, slapping, beating. Okay, now another sign is tying. Like you see mothers, you hear news of a stepmom tying the ends of a stepchild for 5 days. You know, I don't know, there was this, it's been a while though, like there was this news that went viral for, I can't remember, like she used rubber, I think, to tie the hands of her stepson for days, to the point that when they removed the rubber, the hands were already deformed. Like, you see, that's the length that people can go to when it comes to, you know, especially when it's not a child of their own. So we also have signs of a physically abused child. Now, why I'm giving out these signs, or why I'm talking to us about these signs, is this abused child might not or may not necessarily be around you. It's for you to be able to identify, or for you to be able to know a child who has been, or who is being abused, or who has been abused. So when you see these signs in a child, you know, okay, something is definitely wrong with this person. Now, this child is not normal. There's something wrong with this child. Now, when you see a child with bruises, you see a child with burns all over the body, not even all over, but you know, in some places you see bruises, you see burns. Now, that's a sign this child has been abused one way or the other. Now, when you see a child with broken bones, now when I say broken bones are, there are some child that are just stubborn. You know, this child that does this mama me but you know, there are child that just fly different. You know, when they play rough. So, you know, broken bones can be as a result of rough play, but doesn't necessarily mean the child was abused. But it's also a sign. Now, it's better if you, probably when you ask and say, oh no, I fell down from this, I fell down while playing with my friends. The broken bone is also a sign of physically abused child. Then we also have when a child inappropriately dressed. You know, okay, let's say a child that has recently been flogged and has marks all over the body. Now, you would not want to go out with an armless. Or she would not want to go out with an armless, exposing everything. So when, like say, in this kind of weather, in this our hot weather, you're not seeing a child with, you know, fully dressed, long sleeves, if possible sweater, you know, covering all parts of the body. A wrong dressing for the wrong weather. Now, that's a sign that, okay, we can press the view, we can press somewhere. Now that's it. I forgot to even mention, you know, when a child deliberately or constantly feel threatened of a person, or when the child like refuse to go to a particular place or to go meet a particular person, it's kind of suspicious, because especially when the child is, or the person is someone who the child has been playing with before, or the child has been visiting the person's place, and all of a sudden it just stops. Now that's a point to, if that's something you should be very suspicious about, or very suspicious of. Now to the next one, we're going on emotional. Talking about emotional abuse. We'll be talking about sexual abuse. Still on the topic, yes, still on the topic, child abuse. Now we're still talking on child abuse. We've spoken about what child abuse is, the forms of child abuse, like that's the types of child abuse that we have. We spoke about neglect. We spoke about physical abuse. We spoke about neglect and physical abuse. So now we are talking about emotional abuse. Now, what is emotional abuse? Emotional abuse is, when you are being abused emotionally, in a layman's language. Okay, emotional abuse occurs when a person purposely, how would I put it, harms a child's self-worth or well-being by saying to the person, or by putting out right to the child's face that he or she is not good enough, he or she is unwanted, he or she is a mistake. Like just telling the child that the child is useless. Those kind of things we say when we are angry to a child, and we tell you're just useless, you're just good for nothing. I don't know why I gave birth to you. I don't know why you came to my life. When those when the parent is being frustrated and transfers the aggression to the child, probably the child does a little mistake or a little misdoing right at that moment. So we tend to transfer the aggression to the child. Now, I want us to know that these words, the words we say to these children, the things we say in front of these children, kind of affect them emotionally. Like it affects everything about them. It affects their mental state. It affects, it just affects their way of thinking. It affects their actions. It affects their decision making. It affects everything that has to do with the child, especially when it's something you do on a regular. Especially when it's words you say to the child on a regular. There's nothing the child does that is not well done. Like there's nothing the child does that is well done to you. Like in your presence, in your face, is, man, you're just good for nothing. Just forget it. There's nothing you can do about it. I saw a movie recently, and it happened that the child was as a result of rape. So the mother was always into, deep sad thoughts whenever she saw the child, and most times she transferred that hatred to the child. The hatred of the what happened to her, she transferred it to the child. She was also always insulting the child, telling the child how bad she was or how much she regrets having her in her life. Now this made the child grow up to be a bad person, and that's the influence. So that's the impact of emotional abuse in children, especially when it happens at a very tender age. Now also know that bullying is a sign of emotional abuse. When you keep bullying a child, tell us our agbayas at home that you will just come, you will enter the house, you will see small children and you start bullying them. To you are just catching your cruise, you're just catching fun, you're just doing you, being you, and showing the child that I'm older than you, so I can do you anyhow. Now these things affect their emotional state. It affects their mental health. It affects their mental state as well. So let's try to reduce the way we shush these children, the way we bully them, and even when you start yelling at a child frequently, you're always screaming at this child, you're always shushing the child, like you're always shutting the child up, not allowing the child express his views or opinion in the situation. And on that, I've seen that a lot. Like it happens a lot when a child tries to talk and the parent is like, "Shut up, I look going to see," or "Shut up, like who invited you to this," or who asked you to contribute, who asked for your contribution. these things. Now, not necessarily a child is someone, how would I say, someone, let's say from 18-year-old and below, that's a child. So even if it's a 17-year-old child, it's nothing like you shushing the child. It also reduces their self-confidence. When you always shut them up, you always tell them how bad they are, you always transfer this hatred in you to the child. Now I'm talking about adults not necessarily the parents, not necessarily the mother, the father, like adults around the child. It could be the teacher, the guardian, the caregiver. Now, as long as the child life is in your care and you do these things, trust me, it's going to really affect the child. Now, this issue of shutting children up, especially when they are talking, I think it's wise or it's advisable to let them talk. You allow them talk. Then when they are done, you then call it. Okay, I've heard what you said, but next time you don't do that. It's wrong. Two adults are talking. You can't just jump into the discussion that way. It's a very bad habit. And, instead of when the child says shut up, this Yoruba word to sound, stuff like that. Yeah, it kills their self-confidence. And now emotional, this shushing of a thing, the bullying of a thing can also happen when the parent or the guardian is not in a very good state of mind. Now, when it happens once or twice, it's not an abuse. But when it's most of these things are when it happens frequently. Like when it happens, except from one, like there's a particular abuse that, trust me, one attempt is an abuse, like one attempt is a crime. But you see, these ones, I'm yet to get there, but these ones I'm just talking about something that happens frequently. When it happens frequently is where we call it or consider it an abuse. So signs of emotionally abused children or child is being anxious or afraid. Now, when a child is always being anxious, or when a child is being suddenly afraid of something or a person, now there is something going on with that child. Those children that any little thing they feel like they just jump up, like, okay, let's say everyone is in a room and someone just suddenly enters, or there's a sudden shout, and the child is like, hey, now it happens frequently. Trust me, there's something wrong with that child. Like the child has experienced or is going through something that really needs attention. Now we also have when a child begins to withdraw from people, withdraw from activities, or withdraw from things around he or she, it's also a sign of emotional. Okay, let's take for example a child who is well-to-do, a child who is outspoken, a child who everyone knows to be an outgoing person, or outspoken child. All of a sudden becomes quiet. All of a sudden begins to isolate his or herself from people, begins to isolate his or herself from activities. Now, don't you isn't that enough to worry about? Someone someone everyone calls a bebelube, someone everyone calls what's this? There are different people that we call, someone who is always too forward, then suddenly the person becomes quiet. Now it's a sign of it's a sign of an abuse. The person is being abused, either emotionally, either it could be neglect, it could be physical abuse, it could be any form of abuse. But trust me, that is a sign of abuse. Then we also have when a child is showing age inappropriate behavior. When I say age inappropriate, is the child is doing something below. It's just like say a child in the middle school sucking his fingers. That's really, when you're seeing a grown-ass kid doing that, something is wrong somewhere. Okay, so that child has been told different things about his or herself, and is where the self-confidence begins to die down, the self-confidence begins to get low. Now those are the things that causes age inappropriate behaviors. Then we also have lack of attention, attachment to a person or parent or guardian or colleague, or when the child, as I said earlier, when the child begins to detach itself from people, detach itself from activities. Now these are signs of emotionally abused children, especially. So, to the last but not the least kind of form of abuse is sexual abuse. Sexual abuse that we all know about, sexual abuse that we usually think is the only form of child abuse. When people hear child abuse, the first thing their mind goes to is, has this child been sexually abused? Where's this child has been abused by so person. The first thing I head goes to is raped, sexually abused. Now I hope with this you've been able to know different kinds of abuse. That not only sexual abuse is child abuse, but then let's still talk about sexual abuse in a child. Okay, sexual abuse is an act that forces children to participate in sexual activities. Now, I want you to know that sexual abuse can occur even without a touch, like without the penetration, without you touching the child. Sexual, when you being aroused, the arousal you get from a child's behavior, or a person that gets aroused from a child's behavior or a child's way of dressing, can also be accused of sexually abusing the child. Now I want us to know that too. Now I know many people have different opinion or different views about sexual abuse. Just like I was talking to someone about this sexual abuse stuff came up with someone and myself and someone, and the person said sexual abuse to him has to do with adults, like not a child, because he sees sexual abuse as something that happens, like something that occurs frequently, not just once, and he feels when a child is sexually abused, the child is being molested or being harassed. He sees it as an harassment and not a sexual abuse. Okay, so like examples of sexual abuse include rape. It also includes penetration, which is including oral sex, then non-penetrative sexual consent or sexual contact, such as hugging, kissing, masturbating, touching. Now those things are sexual abuse. They are under sexual abuse of a child. Then we also have talking dirty or inappropriate jokes with children. Now when you talk, there are things, that's why they always say we should try and caution our words, especially when we have younger ones around. Now, inappropriate jokes, inappropriate speech, inappropriate words used with children or to a child can also be classified under sexual abuse. Now we also have when you forcing or inviting a child to undress. Now you've not touched the child, like you're just forcing the child to undress. It can also be a form of sexual abuse, especially when you're no way related to the child, you have no rights on the child, but then you keep forcing or you're inviting the child over to your place and forcing he or she to undress. That's a sign of. Now, watching others perform sexual activity in presence of a child is also a sexual abuse. Now, those of you that watch movies that have adult consent, that has adult viewings, and you watch these things in the presence of children without this parental guidance stuff, now it's also sexual abuse and you could be arrested for it. Yes, I said it with my full chest. So actually I've seen people do that and like, Ashebi is just a movie, they will cover their face. Why ask them to cover their face when it's something you could just not do in their presence? If at all you have to see that movie, you have to watch that thing, why do you have to do it in the presence of the children? Why not excuse yourself, or rather ask them excuse you before you do it? Now that's sexual abuse. Now also, do you know flashing or exposing your body in presence of children is also sexual abuse? Now to all those our guys that don't like wearing clothes, their body is fighting with their clothes. Those guys that they like showing their six packs and everything. Now when you do this frequently in presence of children, it's you could be taken up for sexual abuse. It's a very bad thing. I know these things are things we see as a regular and normal thing, but trust me, they are not normal thing, because you create this image in the child's head. You create this how would I say it? This sense of nudity in the child's brain right from childhood, like right from when the child is being a child. Yes, I say that. So we also have watching. Okay, as I said, there are a lot of things that are related to sexual abuse that we really do not see as sexual abuse, that we really do not take them serious to be sexual abuse, but trust me, they are sexual abuse, like the ones I just mentioned now. Most times we tend to not take our children's words serious. We just see it as child's play. Like whenever they say something, we're always like, oh, she's still like, she doesn't know what she's saying, she's still a small girl, she's still a small boy. Now I don't know, I think it's high time we take every word they say seriously, even if this word doesn't make sense to us. Let's always try to take some time off and think about what they've said. Take some time off to talk to them one-on-one. You have this family time where you guys tend to rub minds together, talk about your day. When you openly talk about things that happened in that day and without judging the person, that should always be considered. So without having to fight with the person like that. So let's try to encourage that in our family, or even with people that live around us, people that live with us. So another sign is having nightmares. Now children that all of a sudden start having nightmares, like not just dreams. So dreams are when you sleep, I have a dream. No, that's not what I'm talking about. Nightmares, like when you sleep, say you're taji like when you're sleeping and you just screamed out, you just that kind of frightened dream that people have. Nightmare, I'm talking about nightmare. You understand? All those alakala, those kind of things. Now when children suddenly wake from his or her dream with this probably shaking and stuff like that. Now we need to know if something has happened. It could be a trauma from what has happened during the day. So I don't know, let's just try to always find out, or always look, just try to go deep from these things. Like make sure we check the roots of every action our child takes or does in the house. So we also have children having sexually transmitted disease. So there are different ways of having sexually transmitted disease. It could be sometimes not necessarily through sex. It could be sharp objects, mixture of blood, stuff like that, blood contact stuff. Yeah, but most times let's try to look. Of course, there are children with HIV, there are children with STD, there are children with sexually transmitted, like you see small children with sexually transmitted, not necessarily HIV, but there are different sexually transmitted diseases. So when children have this, let's try as much as possible to, that's a sign of sexual abuse in a child. So we should try to, help the child out in that kind of situation. There are lots and lots of signs, especially for sexually abused children. There are lots of signs, but then we'd like to, due to time and we don't want to work out. We are trying to work within our time. So that would be that. I would like you to go further, research, do some researching, know about these things. You could research how to help abused children. You could research, there are reasons why these abuses even happen. So let's try to know why people abuse children, how to help abuse children, and I think those are things we'll also talk about in other episodes of Little Talk. But till then, it's a wrap. Don't forget to click on the subscribe button, down there. I remain Kazeem Omolola, same channel, Stunt TV, STONT TV, every Saturday, 7:30 p.m. Stay tuned. Bye-bye.